of the Hall of Fame. Again, this is how wrestling fans are so ridiculous with their opinion on professional wrestling and how WWE now are apparently considering taking him out of the Hall of Fame, which he was inducted into in 2005. The night after that, of course, I believe he wrestled Shawn Michaels, or a couple of months after that, he wrestled Shawn Michaels at SummerSlam. The thing is, Hulk Hogan cannot be taken out of the Hall of Fame. I think once you're a Hall of Famer, you should always be a Hall of Famer, no matter how unprofessional you may be. We have seen so many people inducted into the Hall of Fame over the years, and so many unprofessional Hall of Famers go above and beyond the requirements of being unprofessional and or described by the definition of being unprofessional. God knows the Ultimate Warrior was unprofessional for years prior to his Hall of Fame induction and eventually going into the Hall of Fame and his death, which followed shortly after. So God knows we have seen so many unprofessional Hall of Famers over the years. The Million Dollar Man, Ted DiBiase, with how unprofessional he was at independent shows, and he was a real money miser, how he didn't care about the fans. All he cared about was his ministry, which I have respect for him for doing, but, we've seen so many unprofessional Hall of Famers over the years. God knows that I've come across a lot of unprofessional Hall of Famers, so, we're not saying that Hulk Hogan is the only unprofessional Hall of Famer that's gone into a Hall of Fame that has seated less than 100 Hall of Famers over the years in their own respective wings, either the celebrity wing or the professional wrestling wing or whatever wing they were inducted into. Hulk Hogan is not the only unprofessional Hall of Famer, so I don't think we should point the finger of unprofessionality towards Hulk Hogan. Now, whatever your opinion is on Hulk Hogan, I invite you to share it with us on our Facebook page at HEW Entertainment, on Twitter at Jonathan Clarke1, and in the comments of this video. I'd love to read down through your opinions on Hulk Hogan and what your views are on this situation. Now, I didn't read the entire article on Hulk Hogan, nor did I make a point to go and actually see this article that was posted on my Facebook page at HEW Entertainment. I just noticed through the notes there were more than one reference of the Hulk Hogan situation. Various updates have been posted about it, and it's been taking me some time to get around to commenting on this because I did want to do some little bit of research, but I didn't do enough research on it to know all the details in full on what happened with this situation. But I think this is a situation that's been blown entirely out of proportion by the media, by the professional wrestling business, and we need to put it to rest. We need to put this issue to rest, and we need to forget about what Hulk Hogan may have said, because you got to respect the freedom of speech right, because WWE would be victims of false advertising would they not, having John Cena come out week in and week out and promoting how we have a freedom of speech right and how we can use that freedom of speech however way we choose to use the freedom of speech right. I think they would be victims of false advertising if they were to turn around and come down on Hulk Hogan for using that same right, just because he had an opinion and he expressed that opinion to the media, and professional wrestling news websites like .com and .net were all over Hulk Hogan's opinion and came down on Hulk Hogan. Hulk Hogan is a bastard for having said what he said. I don't think that he's a racist. I don't think that people should get away with referring to Hulk Hogan as a racist just for having an opinion, because what it comes down to is the freedom of speech right at the end of the day, and that's legal. The freedom of speech right has been legal for so many years. That's why Martin Luther King went above and beyond the rights of a president of the United States and got that legalized for us. That's why we talk about how freedom reigns in the United States of America and why freedom reigns all over the world. I think that we have a right to a freedom of speech, even though some people will tell us that we don't. And I don't think that Hulk Hogan should be came down on or looked at any different than what he's looked at for years, because he's an icon, no matter what he said. He has a right to an opinion just as the next person in line has a right to an opinion. We've seen so many unprofessional wrestlers over the years. God knows the Ultimate Warrior was looked at as the most unprofessional individual in the wrestling business, and he had a right to going into the Hall of Fame. So Hulk Hogan shouldn't be taken out of the Hall of Fame, as though it's been considered to take Hulk Hogan out of the Hall of Fame. God knows there have been so many unprofessional wrestlers over the years. How many times did Stone Cold Steve Austin screw up through the times that he was involved with the wrestling business? God knows that he screwed up more than enough, but they always gave Stone Cold Steve Austin the benefit of the doubt. And I think that in time, once WWE gets past this and their guilt of having done this to Hulk Hogan and coming down on Hulk Hogan, they're going to give Hulk Hogan the benefit of the doubt, because, as I said, very few people like Hulk Hogan and Stone Cold Steve Austin come along every day in the wrestling business. You can try to reproduce a Hulk Hogan or a Stone Cold Steve Austin, but you're never going to do it. You're going to produce superstars who maybe resemble people like Stone Cold Steve Austin or Hulk Hogan. You're going to be doing this all the time, but you're never going to have another Hulk Hogan or another Stone Cold Steve Austin. And that is reality, ladies and gentlemen. That's the reality that slaps us in the face every day. We wish for a different Stone Cold Steve Austin and a different Hulk Hogan to come along all the time. But the reality of it is we're never going to see another Hulk Hogan or a Stone Cold Steve Austin because they're one of a kind. They're one of a generation. They're someone who represented the wrestling business and will always represent the wrestling business and, dare I say, never be forgotten. And I don't think that WWE should get away with coming down on someone like Hulk Hogan. It may seem like I'm taking the side of Hulk Hogan in this issue, and it may sound like I'm biased, but the thing is, the issue of this has really been blown out of proportion by wrestling websites, and dare I say it's been blown out of proportion by wrestling news websites far enough. And I think that we've come to a point in the road now where WWE and Hulk Hogan need to reach a mutual agreement and make that decision whether or not they're going to keep Hulk Hogan in their good side and go on with, having this business relationship with Hulk Hogan for a number of years. I think that it was a great decision. Bringing Hulk Hogan back to the wrestling business. I think it was a professional decision to bring Hulk Hogan back to the wrestling business because it boosted the ratings for a significant amount of time in professional wrestling. So many people watched the product because they had the chance to see Hulk Hogan in a WWE ring for the first time since 2002. The last time Hulk Hogan had done anything with professional wrestling was in 2002, from 2002 to 2005, when he wrestled Shawn Michaels in what was thought to have been one of Hulk Hogan's final matches. He came back the following year to promote Hogan Knows Best, his reality show. He had one final match against Randy Orton and did nothing with WWE since. He went elsewhere, of course, as the general manager of TNA. He was with an on and off again relationship with TNA Wrestling, and then he eventually shows up on the independent circuit doing some small venue events, and then he comes back from there and goes back to the major scene in professional wrestling. And I remember how much that was talked about. I remember how much Hulk Hogan's re-signing what WWE was talked about. Now they're going to throw that away because of something Hulk Hogan said on a professional wrestling news website or may have said to the media. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. How strict. It makes you wonder, at the end of the day, how strict professional wrestling has become. How strict has TNA gotten from years ago? I remember when TNA wrestlers didn't even care if they did interviews without getting the right from TNA Wrestling. Now they have to get approval from TNA Wrestling just to do an interview on a small level radio show. It's absolutely ridiculous how strict the wrestling business has become, and WWE just goes above and beyond the rights of being strict. They have so many restrictions on their wrestlers. They have to get approval to do interviews on smaller radio shows on the internet, on sites like blogtalkradio.com. I mean, give me a break. I mean, really, how far is our interviews going to go? Sometimes people will try to get the best out of wrestlers in interviews, but I mean, interviews can only go so far, and I know how far an interview can go. Sometimes an interview will overstep boundaries, but very seldomly will you hear an interview overstep a boundary, and that's why when wrestlers get off contract with major promotions like WWE and TNA, they go above and beyond for interviews. They really let it all out in an interview, and that's why they're called shoot interviews. And I think that if Hulk Hogan did a shoot interview on his opinion about being a racist now, I think that we would definitely hear a lot from Hulk Hogan, even if he didn't return to professional wrestling. But the thing is, Hulk Hogan is not going to be forgotten about. Now, this issue, I think, it's been compared to the Chris Benoit situation a lot, too, for Hulk Hogan being a racist. But the thing is, Hulk Hogan being referred to as a racist and called a racist is not as far as what the Chris Benoit issue was taken, and that's why they eliminated Chris Benoit from wrestling. They won't show his footage. They won't talk about him. They've forgotten about Chris Benoit and Chris Benoit's career, and I was against that because I think that no matter what Chris Benoit did, obviously Chris Benoit was mentally ill to have gone and done what he did, killing his son, killing his wife, killing over half of his family, and killing himself in a double murder-suicide back in 2007. Obviously, there was some kind of sickness, some kind of issue that Chris Benoit was battling with himself. He was battling with his own form of demons, and I don't think because of that we should hold Chris Benoit accountable. Obviously, we should hold Chris Benoit accountable for what he did, but we shouldn't hold Chris Benoit accountable entirely because there was obviously some sort of demon that he was battling with, and I think that forgetting about Chris Benoit's legacy as a wrestler was totally uncalled for and totally unprofessional. Just what Chris Benoit did was unprofessional. Both parties were victims in that circumstance. So I can understand why people are comparing the Hulk Hogan situation to the Chris Benoit situation because they are both different circumstances. But dare I say, Hulk Hogan's situation did not go as far as what the Chris Benoit situation did or other situations may have gone over the years. So that's why I think this issue has really been blowing up, and it's time to put this issue to rest and forget about what Hulk Hogan did or may have done or may have been caught up within. And I think that we will see Hulk Hogan again in a WWE ring. I mean, it was awesome seeing him promote WrestleMania 30 as the host. It was awesome being the spokesperson for the Susan G. Komen project with WWE. God knows he did a very professional job with that, being the host and the spokesperson for the Susan G. Komen project, raising awareness for breast cancer all throughout the month of October back in 2014. And now after being the spokesperson of both WrestleMania and the Susan G. Komen project, raising awareness for breast cancer, Hulk Hogan is gone. We're at this point in the road now where Hulk Hogan has reached a dispute with professional wrestling and can't get past it. And I think the reason why he can't get past it is because so many people bring this issue up to Hulk Hogan. I think there's way too much unprofessionalism going on here, and I think the unprofessionalism is coming from both the professional wrestling business and also the fans, who are going to always bring this up to Hulk Hogan. And I think that if we don't bring it up to Hulk Hogan, then Hulk Hogan is going to be able to get past it. You know, you talk about Bret Hart all the time and how Bret Hart can't get past the Montreal Screwjob and had animosity towards the wrestling business for so many years. The reason why Bret Hart didn't show up at the Hall of Fame ceremony or at the WrestleMania show was because Bret Hart, you know, had so much animosity towards the professional wrestling business. He showed up to accept his Hall of Fame induction at the Hall of Fame ceremony and didn't show up the night after at WrestleMania because of so much animosity he had. And the reason he had so much animosity towards the professional wrestling business was because so many people brought it up to him, and that's why he kept, you know, the animosity with him for so many years, and why the animosity followed him, because so many people refused to let it go. If so many people hadn't have brought it up to Bret Hart, then Bret Hart probably would still be with the wrestling business, and he would have been with the wrestling business for so many years. But because so many people brought up the issue about himself and Shawn Michaels, the issue about himself and Vince McMahon, he could never let go of it, and the issue just couldn't go away nor die, and that's why we went so many years without Bret Hart in the wrestling business, and that's why we went so many years without The Rock in the wrestling business. The issues just were over-exaggerated, just as this issue has been over-exaggerated and entirely blown out of proportion to a level that's been totally, totally unnecessary, and I think it's time for wrestling fans and the wrestling business just to forget about it. You know, Hulk Hogan being a racist. I mean, we've had wrestlers called far more unprofessional things than just being a racist over the years. I mean, how many times have we seen racist angles in wrestling where blacks have fought whites, or this one have fought that one over a racist issue, or someone's been held down in professional wrestling because of a racist issue? Shelton Benjamin was looked at as a racist for years because WWE apparently were referring to him as a black, and he was being held down for being a black. Remember the Nation of Domination facing people like Ken Shamrock in the wrestling business and how they were looked at as racist in the 1997 summer. I mean, it was amazing, you know, how much WWE exaggerated the issue of racism for so many years in the rated R, the rated 14A era, or whatever you wanted to refer to it as. I mean, we've seen so